I thought this report had an air of optimism about it because for the first time, trade and development and aid has been combined with public health. The report realizes that the pandemic has really thrown a monkey wrench into all of the plans that were put in place over the last 10 years. And now the need is to ensure not only do we have infrastructure and global investment flows going to sustainable development goals, but we also have to have public health policies in place. And I think that's a shot in the arm, so to speak, in terms of insights into how to equalize the inequalities in the global economy. We need to have equalizing of public health as well as the investment of infrastructure and other aid flows.
And as you mentioned, investment and especially funding is a big part of making progress. Now, the report did put a $12 trillion price tag on vaccine inequity among developing countries. How will this inequity show up in economic terms in these communities, and what can be done really to help close that gap?
The inequalities that we see around the world in some ways have to do with the underlying infrastructure that's available in these countries to allow the populations to be productive. And that's the whole purpose of aid, is to get the investment flows into the areas to best where the capital can be best utilized. In the poorer, less developed countries, there's a tremendous need to develop the resources that are already in that country. And what's kept the money away has been the uncertainty that investors face when they go into emerging market economies that don't have rule of law, a clear sense of accounting and accountability and political stability. And I think those are the lessons learned over the last several decades. That what's new in this report is that they also point out the need to ensure the safety of the population, the health safety. And I think reducing inequality has to do a lot with reducing health inequities and leveling opportunities to get good health.
Now, we have seen that Greenfield investments in industry and new infrastructure investment, as you mentioned, but these projects in developing countries were hit especially hard. Talk about how these types of investments work and why it's so vital to address the shortfall.
Investments take decades to pan out, and so plans were made well in advance of when the money flows actually take place. What's happened now has been a disruption of those plans, and so many of the emerging markets have become very hard hit. Oh, by the way, the advanced economies got even more hard hit because there's so much investment going on in the advanced economies that the shortfall there is even greater than what you see in the emerging markets. But the key to restoring normality is to be able to allow the emerging markets to come back online again, and that has a lot to do with accessibility to vaccines and to be able to protect the populations from the spread of COVID virus. That really is the key to going forward.
And we did see that as part of that, the report states that there needs to be a revision of multilateral rules and norms. Who should undertake these revisions and how might those be implemented?
There's been a tug of war in terms of how the trade rules should be determined. UNCTAD and WTO have both gotten together and said we need to allow emerging markets to be able to shape the rules, to be able to influence how investment flows come into the various economies. And here I think China plays a very large role because China has always been an emerging market. In other words, it has been an incredible success story in being able to implement trade policies to reduce inequality within China and also to help its trading partners. But China has now gone beyond emerging market status and become really a very well-developed and advanced economy in many ways. And so emerging markets that emerge and become part of the big boys club have to take on their responsibilities to be able to ensure the other emerging markets are brought up along with them. And I think that's a role that China has to play, and its recent dual circulation strategy of turning inward in some ways goes against that. And I hope the Chinese policymakers will return to become a member of the global economy again and to ensure that their fellow emerging markets also benefit from trade.
And we've seen that UNCTAD is really looking at this multi-pronged approach. They're focusing on 3 policy objectives: reducing inequality, countering corporate power, and reducing carbon emissions. 3 very heavy subjects. Which of these 3 will be the easiest to tackle and why?
Well, none of them will be easy to tackle. In fact, none of them can be tackled alone. It has to be a unified, coordinated policy, and again, done on the part of both United States, the Europe, and Asia. And I think reducing inequality is the outcome of good policies for addressing trade development and also allowing aid to go to places where it's needed most. And I think the secret sauce in all of this is that emerging markets must provide a sense of political stability for investors to bring their money in. And policies have to be geared toward ensuring a sense of certainty that investors will get returns if they put their money in place and leave it there for a long period of time. And the key is to leave it there and not allow investors to just yank their money out with the first drop of a dime.
All right, always great to have your insights. William Lee there, Chief Economist at the Milken Institute.